I think the instinct to make and create flows from children like a natural spring. There's a spontaneous joy and love of doing things and of life itself. There's a similarity in child art that's in every culture throughout the world. And then suddenly, with some people, this dries up. This is one of the great problems of education, is how we humans can retain this very vital quality of creativity. In my early childhood, I was fortunate that I was able to live near the seaside and spend a great deal of my spare time swimming and searching for sea life around the rocks and foreshores of the coast on the peninsula. Strangely enough, I've returned to the peninsula.
He has a wicked sense of humour, at the same time as being a sort of very gentle person.
I believe he was on his own quite early in life, and he became very self-contained.
I first knew Peter here at Tech as head teacher of ceramics when he came up from Melbourne. We were just very much a part-time course in those days. There were no full-time courses at all. All we could do is a 1-2 hour class a week.
We decided the time was ripe to perhaps suggest that there should be a full-time course, that there were people interested in ceramics as a career rather than just as a hobby. And we had 2 students the first year, and it built up from then, and it has continued to the present day and is still expanding.
Well, back in the early 50s, a potter was quite an oddity in Sydney. And even Peter told me it's a pretty dicey game.
Everyone's sort of convinced that Peter's dream was to be surrounded by geisha girls, you know, and to live in Japan and have his own private sort of geisha house that he could go to, be surrounded by them. But in fact, there's this secret fantasy. He wanted to be Hugh Hefner. Japan has always been terribly important to Peter. I mean, it extends far beyond his pottery. He separated his experience in Changi from Japan. I mean, or, you know, from the war. It was something that happened. It's a war situation, and it's not the real world. I mean, certainly amongst Australians who are in prisoner of war camps, they are much more prone to have resentments rather than to feel the sort of closeness that Peter feels. But it's not something that he talks about. He prefers not to at all. I mean, I think that it's something he would much rather just remove completely from his life.
I think as a teacher he has had a very wide influence, but he's also had just as wide an influence as an exhibiting potter. When you're teaching, you're concerned all the time with students' creative ideas and working with them, and it's often very hard to divorce yourself from the students' work and switch off onto your own. It's not an easy process, and now that doesn't have to happen. He's working with his own work all the time, and he's able to experiment a little more with shapes and designs that he's perhaps been thinking about over a period of time.
In his teaching, he was never ever a dogmatic, forceful teacher, but what happened was he would talk and the information would come. It was one of those teaching styles where, rather than feeling at the time you were being hit by all this information, you thought at the end of it, my God, you know, I have really got a lot from that.
Certainly the course was geared to production pottery. He called it bread and butter pottery, the stuff that you could make and churn out and sort of make a living from.
There was always a sound philosophical approach to what he was teaching. There were reasons that were not exclusively technical for doing the things that he was doing or trying to achieve.
Peter never pushed his own particular personal style. I think Peter was rather more concerned with the way of life and the kind of work that he felt a young person could be doing in order to make a living at that. He took a personal responsibility towards the well-being of that student after they left the college.
I think the reason that Peter likes coming here, he started off that way himself in a little house in the country. And he built his little wood kiln and had a little house he built himself. And he likes to see that in his students. I don't know whether it's because it's exactly the same way he did it.
By the time I think both of us came to East Sydney, Peter was talking about lifestyle and not technique anymore.
That's true.
Other people were talking about technique. And the importance of Peter being there was something about philosophy and art and lifestyle and being at one with pottery also.
Mm.
So important for us to have trees around us while we're throwing. It really is very important just to have that sort of peaceness around.
And that comes back into the pots too in terms of decoration. We use little flower motifs and they're stylised. There's no attempt to sort of make realistic copies of the flowers, but yeah, rather keen on the gum tree bush of Australia. Tough country, but it's got real character. I really like that. I like things with strong character. At the time I started doing ceramics, there was a down on functional pottery. Why be a labourer? You know, you're an artist. As far as I see, I'm still an artist, but I'm making functional pots. He always encourages students, this is a good thing, make functional pots.
There's something about the father figure of Peter too that has appealed to someone like me. And the importance of living a lifestyle that's your work and your employment and your joy as well.
Peter, this is my last firing in Australia. Could you write my chum, please?
Thank you, Sugar Sam. It's a great honour.
Thank you.
Successful firing, Sugar Sam.
Well, thank you very much.
And successful pottery when you return to Japan? It's a long time after 13 years in Australia.
Yes. On the other side, I would say thank you very much. To 13 years, you're very good to look after me.
Yeah, thanks for all your work here over that time. It's been wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Japan would have the greatest living link with traditions of the past than any country in the world, where you have 14th and 15th generations of craftsmen who have kept alive values that we lost during the Industrial Revolution. Of course, many of the qualities and values that are expressed in Japanese ceramics are not really exclusively Japanese. The fact is that just as Europe had its Renaissance and great painters, Japan channeled all its energies into ceramic arts. And the equivalent of Leonardo is to be found in some of the great potters of Japan in the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries. These people were creative geniuses of their time who chose ceramics as their main medium of expression. You going to take your kiln god back?
Oh, of course, yes. This is my kiln god.
The wood kiln I only fire 3 times a year, though I have other means of firing, gas and oil. But of all the kilns, I think the wood kilns are most exciting because there are certain fortuitous happenings in the kiln that can bring startling results, sometimes good and sometimes bad. I think I better go down. Wood kiln is a living, almost organic thing that is a continual battle to achieve temperature and to control it. Sometimes the kiln itself takes over, and this again is where you pray to the gods that they'll be kind and give you good results. In all the years that I've been potting, I get just as much excitement when I open a kiln. Frequently I burn my fingers. I have to go away for a day, not to go near the kiln, so that I can open it when it's cool. many of the values that are to be found in Japanese ceramics were found in some of the early medieval pots produced in England, so that there are qualities and values that are found throughout the world that could be called part of the heritage that is universal. When we think of the Industrial Revolution, we can be nostalgic of some of the values and qualities of lifestyles that preceded it. Some people did enjoy lifestyles in which their work gave them fulfillment. And this is one of the negative sides of the Industrial Revolution, that it transplanted whole groups of people from an environment as country craftsmen into city factories in which, as we know from the satanic mills, must have been a denial of life itself, and people have been fighting ever since for work that will give them fulfillment.
Thinking back to his early pots, some of the pots that I have in my collection were from his very first exhibitions at the Macquarie Galleries. And to me, they haven't changed tremendously. They've changed in a flowing sort of way over the years, without any sudden leaps or sudden changes. And they're always very warm, friendly sort of pots, very natural. I never feel there's any forcing with his work. It just seems to flow from him.
He always talked about his little block of land in the country, and he's finally achieved that. And now that he's retired, he's going to the country himself, you know. He's finally going to do what he's been recommending his students should do.
It's often said in the East that a craftsman doesn't mature until he's at least 50. This is rather an inhibiting statement to make to young people, but now I have the opportunity to either prove or disprove this belief that my best work is yet to come.